Hey guys, welcome back to Home Built, and in this episode we have got a bunch of little bits and pieces we need to tackle to start buttoning everything up and getting that engine closer to starting. Alright guys, welcome back, and those who were watching last week will have seen I spent a whole bunch of time building the steering column surround for the Alfarrari and actually getting the indicators to work, the horn, the ignition key and all that sort of stuff. And I had a great win. It was a great episode and I got a lot done. I was very, very happy for a change last week. If you missed it, I'll put a link up above so you can catch up, and please do think about subscribing if you haven't already. It does help the channel out. A few questions from last week. There were a few people who initially was like, why don't I just scan and 3D print the new surround for the car? And that is not that easy. It's actually so much work to get to actually design a nice looking shape without it just being like just a barrel. And I wanted to keep it looking similar-ish to what it did. So keeping the original surround, it worked. It's perfectly shaped for what I needed, and it was the perfect option. I haven't spent much time with the scanners, but from what I've seen, even the sort of the newer-ish iPhones can do a reasonable job of scanning. But once you scan that data, you can't just sort of scan it and press print. You need to then fix it up. It's not quite right, and there's a lot of work. It'd be hours and hours and hours, and particularly even, you know, triple that for somebody who doesn't know what they're doing, aka me, making it when it's perfect for what I need as it is. The original one works. I'm going to be trimming it anyway. It's not going to be staying plastic like that anyway. So I'm more than happy with what I've done. I'm actually over the moon, and I think it looks really good. I think it came out fantastically. So I'm really happy with that. Other comments are why, you know, I could have mounted that key barrel onto the dash, and I briefly considered it, but again, it fits in that standard surround. So making it fit again in the standard surround is perfect, and then it looks still similar to what the original Alfa interior looked like. So that's all part of it. One of the last things is the CNC plasma table. Now I know it is feeling like it's getting a little less home built, and maybe that's not quite as accessible for everybody, and I get that, but there are lots of options out there for doing this sort of stuff now. I've seen a lot of the American guys commenting they're using a company called Send Cut Send, so they design the parts and just send the file away and pick what material they want, and it comes back in the mail. Even simpler if you want to DIY it. If you watched Mike from Stanceworks when he was early on doing a lot of his builds, he would actually use the same program as me, design the pattern exactly like what I did, but instead of sending it to a cutter, he would just print it out on his home computer printer, glue stick it onto the piece of metal, and then cut around, and you've got a perfect template to make a really nice custom accurate part. And that's also a really good option. So yes, obviously not everybody's going to have a CNC plasma table, but the prices of these things are definitely coming down quite a lot and are becoming more affordable in the scheme of things. And any of you guys out there who've got sort of the doing it a lot more, or have a semi-professional shop or something like that, like those things are actually they're not you know $100,000 anymore. They're actually like coming down into the realms of affordability. Anyway. Moving on, today we've got lots of little bits to do, so let's get stuck in. All right, well, I've been working through one of the big headaches that seem to be much more complicated than I expected on this build, and that was the air conditioning system, and particularly the hose layout. Now, I thought I'd lay it all out on the ground so I can get an idea and see if I've got all the bits that I need, and I'm pretty close to where I need to be to get this, hopefully, to work. So I'll run you through now. For those of you who haven't really seen how the air conditioning system works, it's good to have it all laid out so you can have a bit of an idea of how it all flows. rough overview is air conditioning works by expanding and contracting gas, and when the gas, if you've ever sprayed an aerosol can and you see how cold it gets, when a liquid expands into a gas, it gets cold, and that's what they're utilising to make air conditioning work. So basically, it's a cycle, but if we start at the compressor, so we're running an electric compressor in this car, which is going to be in the boot of the Alfarrari. It takes that gas and it compresses it, and it puts it back, it compresses it and pushes it into these condensers. And as it's forced through the condensers, it goes through one, it comes in one side, goes through to the next one. It is returned to its liquid state. Then it goes through to a dryer, which takes moisture out of the system, and then it goes to the evaporator, which is in the car. So that's the thing with the fan on it. So as it gets in there, the liquid goes into the evaporator. It goes into basically like another heat exchanger, like another radiator type deal that the air blows through. As it expands into that, it cools, and that's what blows the cool air in the car. So once it's gone through the evaporator, it comes back out as a gas and goes back into the compressor. Now, there's different sizes of lines that I'm learning about. So I'm running a 10 gauge from the evaporator in the front through to the compressor. The compressor is then a very short run through 8 gauge. I'm going into the condensers, goes through those, and then back out at 6 gauge through the dryer, and then back into the evaporator and expansion valve and stuff again. So setting this all up, getting hoses in the, getting fittings in the right sizes for the hoses and all the rest of it. I think I've got it all sorted out. I've got all of the connections sorted out, which are all different because all of these things came from different places, so it's all over the place. The only one that I'm struggling with is actually these Boxster condensers have these fittings. So I'm using the crossover pipe between. I'm using the original Boxster one because that make it easy. And these have these fittings here. Now, the only thing I managed to find online that was close is this, which is they're sold as a set for a LS swap conversion thing. So, but the top of this is a little bit too big, so I might have to put it on the lathe, see if I can machine it down and see if I can get these to do the job that these do and bolt in, but they're pretty close, and then we'll have it sorted. All right, well, that was a lot of work. I had to change the chuck over to a 4-jaw chuck because I tried to fit this fitting into the lathe, and it turns out that it's this end is not in line with the threads. It was wobbling all over the place, so I had to put it in the 4-jaw and then set it up so that it is perfectly centered with the dial indicator, and I'll show you now. That's now nice and centered, so let's try and machine this down and see if I can get it to actually fit where I need it to. And I won't really know until we pressure test it to actually see whether it's actually going to hold or whether it's going to leak. Hopefully with an O-ring in there, it should be good. All right, well, after a bunch of work on the lathe, I managed to get this so that it actually fits, and when that bolts in, that actually bolts in nice and flush and does the job. So I've got all my fittings, I think, sorted out. So now it's time to start putting the stuff in the car and measuring up hoses and stuff and getting it all to fit in and go the way it needs to go. All right, so my next task is to finish the fitting of my electric water pump. Now, I've done the basic installation already. If you've watched quite a while back, I had to modify the engine. I had to lower the intake plenum. I could no longer fit the factory water pump. So the good alternative is the electric water pump. This is quite a good, reliable unit that has been used a lot by a lot of people, and I've been recommended it. And with using the electric water pump, you no longer need a thermostat, because it basically, using the controller, this is a sort of a full digital heating controller, and this can control the fan and the water pump to different settings. And basically what it does is it will start the water pump sort of in pulses to start with, to keep the water running, and when it gets up to temperature, it'll run faster or slower or whatever. That's how the controller works with this. And it also controls the fan, so again, you don't have the fans running all the time. It all runs off of the temperature, and you can adjust the settings. I worked out the plumbing for this and all that sort of stuff before, and I've done some of the wiring, but I'm going back through my wiring now, trying to remember what I did. And I need to run its own temperature sensor, so that's what I'm going to look at tackling first, is mounting the temperature sensor, and then we'll look at wiring the entire unit. All right, so I had to remove the radiator again. I forgot how tight everything is under here, but I just remembered that I've got to run a -12 line from, that's the oil feed out of the engine. So that's going to come across. It's got to come basically through from down the bottom out down here, up through behind the headlight, tuck through this little corner here, and then go up into the oil cooler. Then it comes out of the oil cooler and then into the dry sump tank. I haven't made that hose yet, so that's the next thing, is I need to lower the oil cooler again, remove the fitting. Everything is so tight. That's extremely tight, but we've got the inlet for the oil cooler. It goes in through here. It tucks in this tiny little space in here. There is very little room. In behind the headlight, there's only just enough room for the headlight to go in and back in there, and then goes down and through here, and it's still only just enough room. The radiator sort of sits here. This goes, tucks around just around the edge of the radiator, and in we've still got the water pump that's going to sit down in here. So everything is very, 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 very tight. So let's start fitting the radio back in and see if we can get the water pump and all the other bits and pieces doing what they need to do. All right, so that was a lot of time doing a bunch of the plumbing that still needed to be done. I finished off making up the Y block. That's for the return breather from the dry sump tank. That is done there. I've also done the heat return hose. So that hose coming out of there comes through, goes down here, and then connects onto the bottom of the radiator. And I also connected up my overflow tank. So that's the overflow tank here, and that's connected up going down here. This all gets locked in by the cover over the top. And as I'm going through it, I remember cutting and welding this little fitting on just here onto the radiator. And do you think I can remember now what it was for? I have no idea. It may just need to be blocked up or something, because I don't know what I'm supposed to be for. The fun of a build that takes multiple years. So in typical fashion, I've spent several hours now getting all the plumbing done, and it doesn't really look like much. But down the bottom here, you can see how tight it is. The electric water pump is in there. The good thing about the electric water pump, it doesn't need to be hard mounted, so it's just mounted to the radiator hoses. And that's wired in and plumbed in, so it goes into my adapter plate. And then coming out, this is actually a fitting that comes with the water pump that actually fits the water temperature sensor. So I've got the water temperature sensor under there that I need to now wire back to the controller, and that actually will help control the fans and the water pump all through that. I've also got the vacuum lines in. I've redone the hose fittings with these proper crimped style fittings, so they look much nicer than the just regular hose clamps. So the front end of the engine is really starting to come together, and doesn't feel like I've done anything, but it's actually a lot of work, and the front is now plumbed, but the back is not. All right, so I spent a fair bit of time then going through making sure my wiring was correct, because I had to change a couple of things that I'd done before. I've rewired, angled these wires so that they're not rubbing anymore, and now I need to start doing something about the PCVs. I was trying to use the factory PCVs, but trying to get a thread that works like this. So I went through and talked to Raceworks, and they scratched their heads together and they came up with these, which are I believe they're a factory PCV off of some other car. So I'm going to use a combination of Raceworks fittings and stuff, and these on either side running through to the breather going into the dry sump tank. Previously there was a bit of confusion. There were lots of people who didn't understand how the PCVs work with a dry sump tank. On a regular car they go back to the throttle bodies, but with a dry sump you've got to imagine it like the dry sump is an extension of the crankcase. So there's a PCV to the dry sump, and then any excess vapors from the dry sump then go back into the throttle bodies. That's how it works. So that's how we're going to start setting it up now. Let's do this, and then hopefully that's the last bit of plumbing for the entire engine. That's been basically 2 full days of work going through and connecting up all of the plumbing on the engine. But now basically the entire engine is plumbed. This whole top part, it's all plumbed. It's almost all wired. There's only basically one more sort of connection on the engine itself to go back, and that is that water temperature sensor, and it's all connected. The very last piece of plumbing that I need to do on the engine is this massive Dash 20 Raceworks oil line, which is actually the return line from the dry sump tank back into the engine. So we may as well get under there now and fit that up. I also have a filter to go straight out. This is a Dash 20 filter that goes straight out of the dry sump tank, just in case anything gets in the dry sump tank. It'll sort of last on line of defense before it goes back in the engine. So we're going to clean this up and connect this up, and that is the last of the plumbing of the engine completely connected, until I find something I missed and it leaks everywhere. All right, so this back here where my hand is, that is the oil return for the dry sump. So the hose that I have has to go from there all the way through to over here to the dry sump tank. It exits the dry sump tank, goes across. I realise now why I hadn't connected it is because my frame that's holding the car up is in the way, and I can't take the frame off until I get the diff back, which is getting rebuilt. So I am actually getting the diff rebuilt. I'm getting extra shims put into to make the LSD tighter. It's basically the only thing I'm not tackling myself, mostly because I just don't have the specialist gear. I don't have presses big enough, and I can't seem to find enough information about doing it myself. Everybody just seems to get a diff professional to do it, which sort of irks me, but that's what it is. So that is getting done by somebody else. So I think as far as that goes, the engine is as plumbed up as I can possibly make it. So let's look at mounting that controller. All right, so I just folded up a very basic bracket for the mount for the controller, so it can stick up under the dash on the passenger side, sort of behind the glove box. It's sort of, you have to stick your head down and get up underneath to actually alter it, but I don't want to alter it. Basically, once it's running, I'll need to initially set it up, but once it's running, it should be good. So I'm going to just paint this bracket up now, put a riv nut in there and mount this up, and then we can start running the wiring. All right, and we have the screen mounted up under here, so I'll be able to get up underneath the dash and have a look, but it'll be hidden by the dash line, and there's plenty of room for the wiring and stuff. There was definitely no room over on the driver's side. That is chock-a-block over there now. So particularly once the aircon goes in and all the ducting goes in, it is a very tight spot over there. But yeah, we're looking good. It may not seem like there was much interesting stuff on the video going on, but I got so much done. Having this engine, besides that one large oil line connected up and completely done under the bonnet, is such a huge step. I am over the moon that this is done. I can now move forward. I can put the bonnet on it. I can put the bonnet window in. I can start buttoning up a bunch of the bits and pieces. It's a huge step. I've been sort of, some of these things have been a bugbear that have been sort of, I've been putting off because I knew it was tight and it was a pain and it was difficult to get there, but it's sorted. So I'm very happy, but that means it's time for Fun Facts with Mrs. Jeff.
Hey guys, in 2003 Ferrari released an upgrade package for the 360 with the Challenge Stradale. So what did the $46,000 upgrade get you? Well, on the whole, a lot less. In fact, the Challenge Stradale weighed 110 kilos less than the Modena due to removal of the carpets, sound deadening, the lighter Alcantara instead of the leather, Lexan side windows and stereo delete. Those who opted to keep the stereo and glass side windows added back 30 kilos. The engine was bumped up to 425 horsepower and it had carbon ceramic brakes taken from the Enzo. Aerodynamics were also addressed with the longer front lip, reshaped rear deck lid and lower skirts. All of this helped the Stradale to lap the Furano test track over 3 seconds faster than the Modena. Overall, this helped Ferrari to meet their goal of successfully creating a car that was 80% street use and 20% track use.
Oh, this is such a huge step to actually have everything in here done and dusted. That is the finished engine bay as it needs to be, which I am just over the moon about. Like, there were so many little things that I still had to tidy up that I sort of was putting off and it was difficult, but I've managed to get it all together and all doing what it's supposed to do in theory. So we're getting so much closer. Obviously, I've still got... there's still the fuel system put in there, which is, there's another fuse box that's got to go on the back of the car. There's still a lot of wiring to do, battery, and there's a bunch of things that I still need to connect up to actually get the car running, but we're getting so much closer.
We're moving in the right direction.
The right direction. All the plumbing is done. That's it. Besides that one pipe that I can't put on until we put it on its wheels, but that's close.
All in due course.
It's coming.
It's
coming.
Like, subscribe, let Jeff know what you think. He loves reading your comments. Hello to everybody from Luftwasser. And yeah, take care everyone and we'll see you soon.
All right, see you guys.
Due to removal of the carpets, lid and lower skirts.
Yes.
Lip skirts, what are we describing here? The longer front lip, the reshaped rear lid, the rear-shaped rear deck.
Not the reshaped. Reshaped.
Reshaped, not reshaped, because it's a rear, reshaped rear. So the longer front lid, the reshaped rear deck lid.
No, longer front lip. You said longer front lid.
Reshaped rear lid.
Deck lid.
Damn it. All of this helped the